The revelation changed everything. Within a week of Dr. Chen's identification of the ancient orthodontic work, the news had reached the highest levels of the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called. The reef, Dr. Chen's. Ambassadors demanded explanations. Trade agreements were suddenly placed under review, as every species in the galaxy tried to understand what it meant to discover that humanity was not the young, inexperienced species they had appeared to be. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council's Central Assembly, facing the representatives of 247 different species. The Great Chamber hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting her words into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Humanity stands before you today, not as supplicants seeking membership in your ancient community, but as the rightful heirs to the oldest spacefaring civilization in galactic history." The reaction was immediate and explosive. The Altarian representatives' bioluminescent spots flashed in rapid sequences of distress. The Craxian delegation erupted in deep, rumbling discussions that their translators could barely keep up with. The Zephyrian ambassador's 4 eyes blinked in synchronized patterns of confusion. Chancellor Vorthak, the Andromedan who served as the Council's current leader, called for order with a gesture of his 6 arms. "Ambassador Vasquez, these are extraordinary claims. The evidence from Kepler 442b is certainly compelling, but you must understand our difficulty in accepting that humanity has hidden such a significant history from the galactic community." Elena had expected this reaction. "Chancellor, we didn't hide our history from you. We had forgotten it ourselves." She activated the holographic display system, showing images from the bone chamber and the ancient navigation device. For 50,000 years, humanity survived on Earth as hunter-gatherers, then farmers, then industrial civilizations. We retained fragments of our ancient knowledge without understanding their true significance. She gestured to Dr. Chen, who was seated in the human delegation area. Dr. Chen recognized the orthodontic procedures because they're still practiced on Earth today. Techniques that have been passed down through 50,000 years of oral tradition among our healers and medical practitioners. The vegan representative, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like musical bells, spoke through their translator. "If what you claim is true, if humans once possessed technology that could survive galactic catastrophes, where is this technology now? Why do your people appear to be using relatively primitive space drives and communication systems?" Elena smiled. It was a question she had been preparing for since Dr. Chen's report reached Earth. "Respected crystalline friend, you assume that we don't still possess this technology. The truth is more complicated than that. Number 5. Chen's report reached Earth. Respected crystalline. Or Sepin respected crystalline friend." She activated another series of holographic displays, these showing recent human technological developments. 3 months ago, human engineers announced a breakthrough in faster-than-light navigation that increased travel speed by 300%. We claimed it was based on new theoretical work. The truth is that it was based on mathematical formulas carved into the walls of a cave system in Morocco. Formulas that our ancestors had preserved as sacred geometry. The murmur that went through the assembly was audible even through the translation systems. 2 years ago, human medical researchers announced a revolutionary technique for cellular regeneration that eliminated the need for organ transplants. We said it was the result of genetic research. The reality is that it was based on biological knowledge preserved in Tibetan monasteries. Knowledge that monks had maintained for thousands of years without fully understanding its scientific basis. Dr. Chen stood and was recognized by the Chancellor. "Honored representatives, I have spent the last week working with linguistic experts and historians on Earth. We have discovered that humanity has preserved vast amounts of ancient scientific knowledge, but it was disguised as religion, mythology, and cultural traditions." She activated her own display, showing images of ancient human texts and artwork. The Greek myths about Prometheus stealing fire from the gods? They're actually technical manuals for plasma engineering, encoded in story form. They're star charts showing safe navigation routes through regions of space affected by gravitational anomalies. The Altarian representative spoke up, her translation device conveying her confusion. Are you telling us that human culture is actually a preserved technical database? Not all of it, Dr. Chen replied. But significant portions. Yes. Our ancestors faced a choice. When they evacuated to Earth, they could try to maintain their technological civilization and risk losing everything if something went wrong, or they could encode their most essential knowledge into cultural forms that would survive even if civilization collapsed completely. Elena took over the presentation again. They chose survival. They created stories, songs, religious practices, and cultural traditions that would preserve scientific and technical knowledge across millennia. They turned their greatest achievements into myths and legends that would be remembered and passed down even by primitive societies. The Zephyrian ambassador, Dr. Vexhi's superior, requested permission to speak. Ambassador Vasquez, this suggests that humanity has been deliberately concealing their capabilities from the galactic community. Not concealing, Elena corrected. Rediscovering. Until Dr. Chen examined those ancient bones, we didn't fully understand what we were looking at. We knew our cultural traditions contained surprisingly sophisticated knowledge, but we attributed it to human ingenuity rather than inherited wisdom. She paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. But now that we understand our true heritage, we're beginning to decode the full extent of what our ancestors preserved. The results are remarkable. Craze. Craze. Chancellor Vorthok leaned forward in his ceremonial chair. Remarkable how? Elena smiled and activated a new holographic display. This one showed real-time data from human space, including ship movements, industrial outputs, and research facilities. In the week since the Kepler 442b discovery, human industrial capacity has increased by 40%. Our ship construction rate has tripled, and our research teams have made breakthrough discoveries in 17 different scientific fields. The numbers were staggering. Human space, which had been considered a minor region on the galactic periphery, was suddenly showing signs of industrial and technological growth that rivaled the galaxy's major powers. How is such rapid development possible? Demanded the Craxian military advisor. Dr. Chen answered, We're not developing new technology, sir. We're remembering old technology. Every human colony world has cultural traditions that preserve technical knowledge. We're simply teaching our people to read them correctly. Elena continued the presentation with mounting confidence. The Aboriginal Australian communities on New Perth have provided us with navigation techniques that allow ships to travel through hyperspace with 98% greater efficiency than current galactic standard. Tibetan communities on New Himalaya have shared meditation practices that are actually advanced mental conditioning techniques for operating complex technical systems. She clicked to the next display. African communities on New Sahara have contributed architectural principles that allow us to construct space habitats with 50% less material, while providing twice the structural strength. And Native American tribes on New Lakota have provided agricultural techniques that triple food production while actually improving soil quality. The implications were becoming clear to the assembled representatives. Humanity hadn't just been hiding advanced technology. They had been sitting on the preserved knowledge of the most advanced civilization in galactic history, knowledge that was now being rapidly decoded and implemented. But perhaps most significant, Elena said, are the defensive techniques we've begun to remember. The chamber fell completely silent. Defensive techniques were always a matter of galactic concern. Elena activated a final holographic display, showing the defensive systems that human space had constructed in just 1 week. Our ancestors didn't just survive the greatest catastrophe in galactic history by accident. They survived because they were prepared for it. They built systems that could detect cosmic threats from millions of light-years away and could coordinate the evacuation of entire stellar regions. The defensive grid that appeared in the hologram was beyond anything the current galactic civilizations had imagined. Detection networks that spanned thousands of star systems, evacuation protocols that could move billions of individuals across interstellar distances, and, most importantly, technological systems that could actually prevent stellar catastrophes from occurring. Chancellor Vorthok stared at the display in amazement. Are you telling us that humanity has the capability to prevent supernovas? Um, 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 Not yet, Elena admitted. But we're beginning to understand how our ancestors did it. The knowledge is there, preserved in our cultural traditions. It will take time to fully decode and implement. But yes, we believe our ancestors possessed the technology to stabilize failing stars. The reaction in the chamber was mixed. Some representatives looked excited by the possibility of preventing stellar catastrophes. Others looked concerned about the implications of one species possessing such overwhelming technological advantages. The vegan representative chimed a complex musical phrase that their translator rendered as a question. What does humanity intend to do with this knowledge? Your rapid industrial expansion and defensive preparations suggest military intentions. Elena had been expecting this question. Honored crystalline friend, humanity learned a hard lesson 50,000 years ago. We learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place, and that even the most advanced civilizations can be destroyed by forces beyond their control. She gestured to the defensive systems display. We're not building these systems to threaten other species. We're building them to protect all of us from the kind of catastrophe that nearly destroyed the galaxy before. Dr. Chen added her support. The ancient memorial on Kepler 442b wasn't just a record of human history. It was a warning. The stellar chain reaction that forced the evacuation wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was artificially triggered by something our ancestors called the Devourers. A chill went through the assembly as translation devices struggled to convey the concept. Devourers? Chancellor Vorthok asked. We don't yet understand exactly what they were, Dr. Chen admitted. But the ancient records suggest they were entities that fed on stellar energy, deliberately causing stars to collapse to feed their own growth. The evacuation to Earth wasn't just about escaping the supernovas, it was about hiding from whatever had caused them. Elena took over again. Our ancestors spent 50,000 years in hiding, waiting for the galaxy to recover and the threat to pass. Now that we're returning to space, we're doing so with the understanding that the Devourers might still be out there, somewhere in the dark, between the galaxies. The defensive systems display suddenly took on a different meaning. These weren't weapons of conquest. They were preparations for a war that had been postponed for 50 millennia. The rapid expansion of human industrial capacity, the rediscovery of ancient technologies, the construction of defensive networks. All of it is based on the assumption that the threat our ancestors faced might return, Elena explained. We're not trying to dominate the galaxy. We're trying to defend it. Chancellor Vorthok was quiet for a long moment before speaking. Ambassador Vasquez, what does humanity require from the Galactic Council? Elena had been building to this moment. Chancellor, we require nothing, but we offer everything. She gestured to the assembled representatives. Humanity's return to space doesn't have to be a source of tension or competition. We offer to share our rediscovered knowledge with all species that wish to participate in the galaxy's defense. Share how? Joint research facilities, combined industrial projects, integrated defensive networks. Elena smiled. Our ancestors preserved their knowledge for 50,000 years. They didn't do it just to benefit humanity. They did it to ensure that the galaxy would have the tools it needed to survive if the threat ever returned. Dr. Chen stood again. The orthodontist who worked on that ancient human from Kepler 442b didn't just want to straighten teeth. They wanted to preserve the knowledge and techniques that could help people 50,000 years in the future. That's the kind of long-term thinking that built the greatest civilization in galactic history. Elena nodded. And it's the kind of thinking we need now if we're going to face whatever's coming from the dark between the stars. The vote was closer than Elena had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 167 species voted to accept humanity's offer of technological sharing and joint defense. 53 abstained. 27 voted against, but it was enough. The galaxy would begin preparing for threats it didn't fully understand. Using knowledge preserved by a species it had once considered primitive and inexperienced. As the assembly dispersed, and Elena prepared to return to Earth, she received a personal message from Dr. Chen, who was still on Kepler 442b continuing her research. Elena, you need to see what we found in the deeper chambers. It's not just knowledge our ancestors preserved. They left us tools, actual working examples of their technology, stored in stasis fields that have kept them functional for 50,000 years. Elena smiled as she read the message. The orthodontic work had been just the beginning. Humanity's true inheritance was still being discovered. And the galaxy was about to learn just how far human ingenuity could reach when it was backed by 50,000 years of preserved wisdom. In his office on New Geneva, Dr. Peterson was finishing up his last patient of the day, a young human whose braces were finally ready to be removed. As he worked, he hummed an old song his grandmother had taught him. The same song that generations of dentists in his family had hummed while working. He didn't know that the song was actually an ancient technical manual encoded in musical form, preserving the precise mathematical relationships needed to calculate optimal tooth movement. He didn't know that his great-great-grandmother's grandmother had been a refugee from the greatest civilization in galactic history, but he did know that when he looked at the perfect alignment of his patient's teeth, he was seeing the result of techniques that had been perfected by masters whose names were lost to time, whose knowledge had survived the collapse of stars and the passage of millennia. Perfect, he said, removing the last bracket. Your ancestors would be proud. He had no idea how right he was.